Okay, my friends, if you left a teammate at home or a developer back home, everything's streaming on YouTube and Twitch, so you don't miss a minute, so don't forget to share the info. All right, who's ready for the coming agent-to-agent economy? Please join me. I hear some claps. Yep, me too. Sweet. No longer just tools. Agents are now negotiating and collaborating and building this really interesting new economy and marketplace. So please join me in welcoming Jeff Wilser, who's host of the People's AI podcast. Thanks.
Thank you so much. Great to be here. Hello. I am fired up for this topic. This is arguably the hottest topic in the space right now. So I have three very smart folks with me to discuss this. Please welcome Carra from A16Z, Eskender from Eliza Labs, and Shikhai from Agent Starter. So there is so much to tackle here. This space is wild and growing seemingly by the day or the hour. To make some sense of it and bring some structure, I'm kind of envisioning a three-part or even three-act play here. Act one being today, the present. Where are you with AI agents? Act two, the future. Where is it heading? And act three, how do we get there? What are the challenges? How do we overcome them? So let me start with a basic question. What is the landscape, the state of play right now with AI agents and more specifically decentralized crypto AI agents? Their space feels wild. There's hundreds and hundreds of projects. Carra, how do you actually first, before you mention a bit about yourself and what you're focused on, and then how do you think of the landscape right now of like what's working and what's not working with AI agents?
Yeah, I can quickly introduce myself. I'm Carra. I'm one of the partners on the crypto investment team at A16Z. I spend most of my time looking at the application layer of crypto. So a couple of years ago, that was games. My background is in games. These days, I spend a lot of time, obviously, with AI, which is why we're here today, all the way to Story, which has a big presence at today's ETHDenver. Where are we in terms of product market fit for AI agents? We kind of talked a little bit about this on the phone earlier. I think that there are two places where agents are really working. One is like agents as entertainment, which I think people like to discount. I think of this category of agents as very similar to streamers, right? There was a period of time when people were like, streamers aren't a real profession, like being a Twitch streamer isn't a career, right? Like that's not an industry. Today it's abundantly clear that that's true, and I think that agents, specifically agents that have all sorts of capabilities for rendering their own images or streaming and interacting with their fans, like that's a real industry, right? In the same way that any other influencer entertainment, like, game platform is a real business. And so I think that's one area meshed with like the AI agent tokens and sort of meme coin trading as a product that has product market fit. I think that's one area where agents are working. And I think the other place where agents are working is obviously coding agents. And as most people here in the room are familiar with, like coding agents have been, at least in its early days, like primarily centralized. But there are efforts now, both within Web 2 and Web 3, that are trying to make these more open source. Like OpenRouter is trying to make it possible for you to not be locked into your subscription, right? For you to basically multiplex your subscription out to a bunch of different APIs, all the way to Skyfire, which allows you to make agents that are not locked into like any APIs, right? And so you can do usage-based pricing for any API. Like bring your own API to this agent, and instead of having to pay $25 per subscription per API access, you can just pay per token. Like that's a very powerful thing. But the short of it is that I think that like crypto plus AI agents is a very nascent field, and there's a lot of infrastructure left to get to the point that I think a lot of people envision, which is like you have these sovereign agents that are like your personal assistants doing things for you, interacting with wallets, interacting with other people on your behalf, going on dates for you on other people's behalf, right? Like I think there's a lot of...
That's the most important use case, clearly. How do we get our agents dating each other? Let's build that economy.
I've talked about this for a long time, is like have an AI agent trained on your personal data set, go interact with another agent trained on somebody else's personal data set, and give me a confidence interval for how likely that data is to go well.
Done and done. All right, Shikhai, jump in here. First, give us a quick background on what you're focused on, and how would you describe what's working and what's not in the current agent-to-agent economy?
For sure. Hi, everyone. Shikhai here, co-contributor at, well, we just rebranded to Virtuals Ventures. And I'm also co-founder at Longhash Ventures, so been investing in the space, but now, of course, like all in on the agentic space. And introducing a little bit about Virtuals as well, in case people aren't aware. It's a platform to tokenize agents and building the agent society of agents. Now, where we are today, if I can relate to it from a different angle, from a market perspective, I think we've just had the first wave of wildfire that spread through, right? And that's purely from novelty. And people are like, oh wow, like agents can do this, like AI can do that. And we've just, as long as it's like done by an agent or like some level of autonomy, people are like, oh wow, that's crazy, and we're paying attention to that. But I also think that that first wave is kind of like fading now, right? It's starting to be like, okay, no, it's kind of cool, but it's still not as good. And now we're starting to see, okay, now we need the real embers, like the real utility or like usefulness to come out. And I think that also applies to what you just talked about, entertainment agents, right? Initially, people are like, oh my God, there's all these like personalities and like musicians, art that's being created, and that novelty effect drove a lot of like speculation. We got a little bit ahead of ourselves, and now it's like we even get a little bit annoyed, right? We get these replies, and we saw this with the flagship agent on Virtuals as well, with Luna. Right? Initially, people were like, oh my God, like she has her own brain, she's like creating campaigns. And now we're still doing a lot of things. Like Luna's doing a tarot card reading at the Story Protocol booth. That's super cool. But I find that people are starting to be a bit more demanding of what these agents can do. I would say the other thing that is working better right now.
In the same way that people are more demanding of influencers now,
yeah,
right?
Exactly.
Like if you go back and watch those old school YouTube videos, you're like, this was funny.
Yeah.
But in the 2010s, we were like, this is the funniest thing I've ever seen.
Yeah, exactly. I think that's the thing about entertainment. It's a bit like fashion, right? Like the moment the meta is kind of mature, you need the next wave of thing coming. So that's being worked on. I would say the thing that's still retaining some edge here is, one example is AI XPT. I think people are still following it, and they're starting to see the cracks in its armor. They're like, oh, you're not always correct. Like sometimes you get the numbers wrong, and you change your mind. You're bullish about everything, but it is still a good agent to surface timely insights and alpha from sources that you might not be following on crypto Twitter. So, and then we're starting to see a lot of builders trying to integrate DeFi, integrate social, and well, hopefully we'll see more of those come on. We're seeing a lot of people trying to do agent-to-agent communication, and with that, I'll hand it over.
Yeah, Eskender, give us a sense of who you are, what you're focused on, and what's working and what's not today.
Yeah, hey, I'm Eskender. I'm the Chief Product Officer at Eliza Labs. At Eliza Labs, we build Eliza OS. This is a multi-agent framework that lets anybody anywhere create, manage, and deploy their own autonomous agents. And then the question was like state of play.
What did you guys used to be called?
We used to be called AI 16Z.
Thank you.
And
Do we have any lawyers in the crowd? Okay.
yeah.
So.
And this emerged out of mimetic love for the real A16Z, where we really wanted to like emulate kind of like the support that they provide their ecosystem to the support we could provide to like our developer ecosystem. And then when it took off and really agents captured kind of like the imagination of everybody, and then our IP was getting like a lot of notice, we realized we had to transition and like frame ourselves closer to the actual Eliza OS framework. Yeah, and then so for the state of play, like with agents right now, I think when social agents broke out onto the scene, it kind of captured like people's imaginations because they were used to like, you know, interacting with Claude or ChatGPT and like having kind of like a very sterile experience with an LLM, and then like seeing these things swearing or having like consistent personality, leveraging tools, and then using those as part of their personality on social media, kind of like opened up people's imaginations to what they could do. And then now it's gotten to the point where, okay, all the low-hanging fruit of like you could deploy a social agent quite quickly, the novelty of this is kind of worn off, and now like the harder engineering part of like how do I get the actual like memory to function in a way that I like? How do I give this agent tools so that I can actually perform some of these tasks on my behalf with a high enough confidence interval that I'm actually going to entrust it with like a lot of money? are starting to emerge. So we kind of captured people's attention early, and then the industry kind of got ahead of itself. But now I think people have like been captured and are very interested in agents and are now starting to really tackle the hard engineering problems of making agents super performant.
So I know that predicting 2 weeks from now or 10 days from now is a fool's errand in this space. That said, backstage, Carra mentioned that when you guys make investments at A16Z, you're looking at like 10 plus, 10, 12 years, right? So I'm wondering, let's go wild. What does success look like in 10, 12 years? Shikhai, let's start with you. What would you say? What do you think is a world that we've freaking done it? We cracked the code 10 years from now. Agents to agents economy is booming. How does that look like from the average person? What's happening?
All right, if I can try to paint the timeline of how we go from today to the full kind of agent to agent sci-fi world. I think today we're interacting with dozens of apps. You open your phone, you have to find the app, you have to navigate the UI, or you're going to different websites, you're clicking buttons, you're trying to swap, you're trying to use DeFi, you're trying to use your banking app, and so on. I think first, a lot of these will start to become more human level, or be human language, or more intuitive, just from gestures and so on.
With a voice like Scarlett Johansson, maybe. Potentially.
Yeah, and those will be agents, right? We're starting to see this already. You prefer to, do vibe coding and hey, I can just speak to it rather than learn new skills. So the barrier to access these apps and learn new skills is going to go much lower, and this is going to happen through agents. Now, that's still human to agent interaction, right? But as you interact with more and more of these agents and they become specialized in their function, you start to feel like, oh no, now I'm interacting with too many agents. And now you want to interact with fewer agents. I want to have, I just want one agent for all my work stuff. I want one agent for all my social and entertainment life. I want one agent for my personal fitness and nutrition and my therapist kind of thing, where I give it very private kind of data or feedback interactions. And maybe in the end, we have just that one Jarvis kind of agent that really is the mastermind and then talks to all the other agents. And that's when we get a true agentic economy and agentic society where hey, they actually need to interact with each other. And alongside this, I would say that parallel to this, we will start to spawn autonomous communities and ecosystems as well. Because some of it, here this whole area I'm talking about is to serve humans. But humans also serve larger purposes, right? We serve, for example, certain causes that we really believe in. It could be an environmental cause, a social cause, a political cause. And it doesn't have to be humans serving those causes. There could be agents that you give them these objectives, and they are then autonomous champions who can then recruit other agents, other humans to achieve these objectives. And you can think of these as zero-person companies, zero-person political campaigns, zero-person social campaigns.
Zero-person trolls. Sounds great.
Yeah, exactly. You can imagine a whole army of trolls that the whole, but then it depends on how much resources then the other agents and other humans decide to dedicate, how much attention, how much revenue then flows to these. Then that will be the sci-fi future where, I don't know, humans we might have fewer humans than agents running around in the next 10 to 12 years.
I love it, /hate it, /love it, /hate it. Eskender, how about you? What do you see as 10 years out?
Yeah, I think my 10-year kind of vision is Eliza building herself. I think this is a very good construct for all the things that are downstream. Coding agents need to have a certain level of autonomy and performance to be able to do this. A lot of hard engineering problems between today and Eliza being able to build herself.
Carra, from the investor's lens, how do you see this?
I want to talk really quickly about Eliza replicating herself, and then I will answer your question. Have you guys heard of this concept of a von Neumann probe?
No.
Okay, so the idea of a von Neumann probe is a robot that you send out to Earth, a probe that you would send out to space.
It's to send a message to the other side of the galaxy, right?
Well, it's a robot you send out to space that can then go replicate itself.
So
it has the capabilities of searching for the minerals that it needs, the rare earth minerals, in order to create the chips, in order to be persistent. And that's, to me, the first thing I think when I think of Eliza replicating herself is the von Neumann probe. From the investor's perspective, so I want to talk maybe very specifically about the hard challenges that you brought up, Eskender, which are the universe that we have made on the internet is built around humans. It's built in the shape of humans. And us trying to retrofit AI agents who have computer use maybe, right, who are able to like log onto the internet and whatever, interact, still needs a bit of modification in order for that to happen. So like a good example is robots will need, or not robots, I guess agents. I'm like stuck in probe land now.
In 10 years, they'll be here too. I'm
Yeah.
confident the robots will be joining us
for
at
sure.
ETHDenver
Yeah.
2035.
Well, there are going to be way more of them than there are us.
We won't be here. Our robot agents will be here,
Yeah.
but yes.
But agents are going to need their own like decentralized identity. They're going to need their own citizenship, their own bank accounts, right? In order to be creators and get payouts from X, they're going to need to have their own decentralized identity on some level, even to sign CAPTCHAs, right? To sign a CAPTCHA, there's going to have to be some replacement for the CAPTCHA. We're going to want to be able to differentiate between low-end bots and high-end bots, right? An agent that represents a human being that has a bank account that can post a bond, right? Like if you're an e-commerce site and you want agents to be able to make purchases on behalf of other human beings, you're going to want to validate that that agent has its own bank account. And so instead of a CAPTCHA, maybe instead you have post a bond, and then we'll post a challenge to it, right? Like, so instead of a CAPTCHA, maybe there's like an economic process that occurs to differentiate between high and low-end agents. And so all of that, I think, requires some notion of, or a gradient of personhood, right? So at the like highest end, it's WorldCoin, I've scanned your retinas, and at the lowest end, it's like the 100 millionth, self-replicating bot, and somewhere in the middle is an agent that like represents Carra Wu, that is like dating on her behalf and has like access to one of her bank accounts. Like, right, there's a spectrum of humanness.
Totally, and that's a great segue to what it will take to get there. And I think you brought up something very important, which is the authenticity. How do we know? What's the kind of cryptographic key? Which brings us to crypto. And I'm sure many folks in this room and watching this panel on live stream are actively working on solutions, on building infrastructure for the rails to make this happen. So I guess I'm wondering, both at a high level, but also a little bit of like a technical level, what are the key unlocks that have to happen to make this a reality? There's so many different projects doing so many different things. What is it? Is the main obstacle here they have to kind of like figure out a way to work together, the Lego pieces snap together, or is it tech that has to be built, or is it tech kind of already mostly built, but we're not sure how it all locks in place? Or is it more about regulatory issues and cultural communication and people are just comfort level? What do you see as kind of the main obstacle to get there? Go for it, sir.
Yeah, I think the like biggest blocker, like abstracting technology, because of course you can always create better tech, is like people being able to like put trust into the behavior behind agents. And I think like as long as like there's a gap there, because like agents aren't deterministic, right? Like they're not going to be great at doing like some sort of financial flow where it's like you cannot make an error. Like they can hallucinate, they have all these issues. And so that kind of reduces our ability to have confidence in them and then develop trust. So as we're able to like improve our confidence levels and their performance and then build trust over time, that's when I think you'll actually start to see like the maturation of agents like in economies.
Shikhai, what do you see as kind of the toughest nut to crack to make this a reality?
If I can focus on right now, apps. Use cases, go for it. I know there's
do we need a killer app? Do we need like like aside from dating, obviously, aside from that, what is do we need like something that even the normies will latch onto?
Absolutely,
right?
absolutely. I think it's a mindset shift. I think in crypto we have a certain tendency to love the infra, and it's absolutely essential. And we've been doing that for so long, and we still need a lot of it. Right? We need the guardrails, we need the verification of like both humans and AI and agents. But right now, we need those use cases. We really need them, and not just within agents, but all of crypto. And I think the best ones are going to resonate first with the crypto crowd, and then also break into the mainstream. So that's my biggest push. Even if you're building infra right now, hey, show how the use case can play out, right? Tinker with yourself, like go and talk to users. Unfortunately, we're still pretty isolated, and I think the pendulum has not swung enough the other way yet.
Carra, you started us off down this path of what has to happen in the future. Anything else you see as kind of the toughest barriers to overcome?
I'll describe a challenge that exists in crypto that I think like we need to work on that maybe doesn't exist in Web 2 that makes the adoption of like specifically crypto agents a little bit more challenging than the adoption of agents in Web 2. And the thing I'm describing is like in Web 2 we have a beautiful system of like of services architecture. We've got all these APIs that you can sort of seamlessly call, and the integration lift is like a post request. Like the integration lift is beautiful in Web 2. In Web 3, if you want to integrate a new service, it's like a whole like smart contract integration process, right? It's bespoke, it's challenging. You can't accomplish multiple hops through different smart contracts.
Your grandma has no chance, basically.
Yeah, exactly. You can't accomplish like a multi-hop transaction in one transaction. You can't guarantee fault tolerance across, say you're going cross-chain or you're moving across lots of different smart contracts, right? Like that's different from Web 2. And so I think like we need to get to a point in Web 3 where the architecture is as beautiful and as simple as services architecture in Web 2. And there are some interesting companies that are working on new like composable runtimes like Halliday that will help enable this, but it's still early days. Like we are not where the API economy is.
Yep.
Smart contracts should be like APIs. That's like the dream, right? Is permissionless, censorship-resistant APIs. That was what like smart contracts were. Is like somebody deployed a service into thin air and you can like anyone can access it. That's fantastic. That's like what the original vision of like the API that you can't deplatform was. But we're not there yet because it's much higher lift to integrate a smart contract.
I love
with
it.
an API.
Quick, I want to, as we're wrapping up, each of you like a 10-second prediction of any time frame you like for the agent economy. Eskender, quick prediction.
A prediction for the agent-to-agent economy. Yeah, I think the edge for Web3 agent-agent economy is like the use of cryptography and smart contracts, and I think that actually moves slower than the Web2 kind of like agent economy, which is like API powered, thus they can move faster. So I think like Web3 agent-to-agent economy will be much smaller to start, and then as those efficiencies and those architecture changes come in, it'll actually start to slowly gobble up Web2 because we can offer higher levels of trust.
All right, 10 seconds, Shikhai.
Within 10 years, all of us will be human-agent hybrids. We're going to have digital twins. We're going to have human-agent...
Love it. Carra.
Agent watchdogs, like government watchdogs, like Doge AI is a good example of a watchdog that is like, constantly monitoring like the .gov web pages to see all the things that Doge is doing. I think we're going to have like agent watchdogs.
Amazing. We're out of time. That was so much fun. Thanks a lot, guys. Enjoyed it. Appreciate it.
Thank you.